DreAllDay.com.
An excellent life is but a series of excellent decisions strung together, and you just made, DJ Khaled voice, another one. You are tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, yes, there is more. You got to use those personal initiative, go get an energy that moves you to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Putting all this together, you get the mindset, the method, the philosophy, the book, the show known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to know, how can you identify that you're doing something in life. So when I say doing something, I'll put it in air quotes, quote, doing something, close quote. How do you know that what you're doing is significant, that it actually matters, that you're going to make an impact, that you're involved in something that is anybody's going to give a damn about? Yourself, starting with yourself. Have you ever been in a space in your life when you've been working, but you're not quite sure? It's not a complete no, but it's also not a yes that you're in the right place. Or if you're doing something that's going to matter a year from now, or you're doing something that matters to anybody outside of maybe your supervisor or just yourself, depending on what you're working on. You ever felt like that? Like, is this even, am I putting all this effort in for nothing? You ever felt like you were just working and possibly it was for nothing, that it meant it didn't really have any impact on anybody? I'll tell you some ways that you can figure out that you're doing, quote, something, close quote, in life. Now, there are a lot of ways to figure out you're doing something in life. I'm going to give you just a few of them here today. So don't consider this to be a conclusive list. This list could be longer. Maybe I'll do a part 2 sometime in the future, but let's go right into it. How to know when you're doing something in life. Number 1, when other people's only possible criticism of you is to tell you that someone else or something else is better than you, but not them themselves. They're just telling you that, yeah, you're good, but you're not better than this person right here. Or your business is doing all right, but your business is not better than this over here. Like, you're doing your thing, but you'll never get to the level that this person or this thing or this idea or whatever else there is out there, you'll never get to that level. When people are telling you that, yeah, you're okay or you're all right, but you're not better than this, that, and the third, you're doing something. Why is that? Let me tell you what it means when a person is criticizing you in this way. It means they're envious of what you're doing. They may not be envious necessarily of your progress, because you might not have much progress just yet. They may not be envious of your position, because you might not have quite a position just yet. But nobody envies a person who's doing nothing. So if you have anyone who it seems like the things that they're saying about you are out of envy, it's because you're doing something. Nobody envies a person who's going nowhere. You ever seen a person who maybe a person who's on a corner when you come off the highway exit, and they're asking for money to every car that stopped at the light? All right, nobody envies that person. Nobody envies the person who is at a level that is beneath them and it doesn't seem they're going anywhere further. We only envy people when it seems like maybe we're equal right now, but it seems like they're going further. Or maybe they're below us right now, but it seems like they're about to pass us up. That's the people that get envied in life. In my book, Work on Your Game, I told you that when people are criticizing you, they're not really talking about you. They're really talking about themselves. And what I mean by that is this. All of us, as I've told you many episodes here, especially recently, all of us are narcissists. We are all more focused on ourselves than we are anyone else. So when somebody is criticizing you, they're just using you as the canvas on which to paint their thoughts and their feelings. You just happen to be the person that's around today, so they're using you for the criticism. If you weren't around, they be lobbying that same criticism, but they just be sending it somewhere else because you're not around to get it. So they use someone else to paint on. All right, tomorrow it'll be a different person. Next day it'll be a different person. Next day it might be you all over again because you're there again. People criticize just to express through you what they're feeling in their own minds, maybe about themselves and maybe about something else, but it's definitely not about you. So when someone criticizes you, don't take it so personal. I know that's hard to do. It's damn sure hard to do in the moment. You probably won't even think of what I'm saying right now when you're in the moment of being criticized. But once you get a little bit of space, a little bit of time to consider what got said to you, think about that. When someone says that you're not better than XYZ person, place, or thing, what they're really saying is what they would be saying to themselves. And what that does is justify them not going after it. So let's flesh this out so you can understand. We'll just use a basic example. So let's say you were a rapper, okay? And you're putting your music out, you're doing your thing, you're making some progress, you're building a bit of a fan base. And one of your friends, they say to you, well, yeah, you're rapping, but look, you'll never be as big as Drake. You'll never be on a level as Jay-Z. You'll never be like Meek Mill. You'll never be as popular as 2 Chainz. What are they really saying to you? Why would they say that to you? Are they trying to discourage you from rapping? Do they want you to stop and go back to your job at Walmart? What is it that they get out of levying that criticism at you? Are they just being honest? Are they just sharing their opinion? Are they just pointing out facts, as people like to say? Or are they just stating facts, as people like to say? What are they actually doing when they say that? Let me tell you what they're doing. Something within them wants to do something like what you're doing. Maybe they want to be a rapper too. Maybe it's not rap though. Maybe for them it's basketball. Maybe for them it's starting a business. Maybe for them it's moving out of their hometown and going somewhere and starting a career doing something else. Maybe for them it's going to school. It's something that is either what you're doing specifically or something parallel to what you're doing that the criticizer, the critic, wants to actually do, but they're not doing it. So all they're doing is using you as a canvas to say to themselves what they don't have a heart to say to themselves. So they're saying it to you, and they're just using you as a go-between. In other words, that person, they will go to school, but they haven't. They would start their business, but they haven't done it. They would do music too like you, but they haven't begun. Why? Because they are convinced that there's only so far that they can go with it. And they're convinced that it's not worth it to try. So they're convinced that, yeah, I could rap too the same way that you're rapping, but I'll never be as big as Drake or 2 Chainz or Meek Mill. So you know what? I'm not going to try. They convince themselves that it's not worth the effort to try. Therefore, they're going to criticize you by letting you know that it's not worth your effort to try, because it's the same way they feel about themselves. It's not really about you. They have convinced themselves a certain way. So the criticism they throw out at you, all they're doing is just reaffirming what they already believe. So the next time someone criticizes you, and if you happen to be, now there are some exceptions, I'm gonna get to those in a minute, but the next time someone's criticizing you and it seems like they're just, as people like to say, hating on you, they're just talking shit, and it seems like they have there's nothing they gain from doing it, but they're just saying things about you to try to discourage you or talk down on you or hate on you or whatever it is they're trying to do. Understand that all they're doing is taking what they feel about themselves, wrapping it up in talk that's about you and what you're doing, and it's just being disguised. All right, you're just the canvas that they're painting on. You just happen to be the convenient target at the moment. Seeing you go further than how far they think they could go in their lives would kill them on the inside. Therefore, they're going to criticize you because they hope that criticism will have the same effect on you that criticism had on them, slowing you down, stopping you from trying, and keeping you where you are. You follow what I said there? You should rewind that back to make sure you caught everything that I explained to you there. When a person is criticizing or hating on you, if you want to call it that, if that's actually what they're doing. And there are some people who do that. So when they're doing that, all they're doing is taking what they've already told themselves, and it may not be the same thing that you're doing. They might want to be a rapper, or you're a basketball player. So they're going to say, well, you're not going to make it to the NBA. That's their way of telling themselves, well, you're not going to become a famous rapper. All right, you're not going to become a famous ball player. Same way I'm not going to become a famous rapper. The more they say that, is affirmation bias. It's just confirmation bias. It's an affirmation that confirms what they already believe. Let me just say that to myself again, so I can again remind myself why it makes sense to not try to do my thing the same way I'm trying to tell you not to do your thing. All right, these people just haven't received sufficient personal development. They haven't listened to this podcast, absolutely. They haven't listened to or read or been engaged in enough personal development to understand that they got to bring it back to themselves. So what they do is throw all their criticism out at other people. So you have to be mature enough, you, the person that's doing something, to understand that that's where the criticism and hate, quote unquote hate, comes from some people. Understand that not all criticism is this. I want to make sure I'm putting that disclaimer out there about any criticisms that you receive. Some people are criticizing you and they actually are qualified to criticize you, and they actually may have the right information, and they may actually be saying things that are accurate that you need to hear and that you need to heed. I did an episode on the value of not friends in life. Look that up. If you're a member of the game group, you can listen to that episode. If you're not a member, then just join. It's a free 2-week trial. Go to workonmygame.com/game group. Start the free 2-week trial and just listen to that episode. It'll be worth it. Seeing you go further than where they think they could go is going to kill them. So they hate, hoping like hell that you don't go further than they would, because then they think they could, because then it's going to destroy them. Then they can't, there's no way they can rationalize that. They'll fall apart mentally. So just keep that in mind. But you absolutely know you're doing something when you're getting that from other people. Point number 2. Today's topic is how to know that you're doing something that matters in life. Is when your position or your product or your service or your idea or whatever it is you represent is being attacked. Now, I just kind of said that when it comes to people like hating on you or talking about you personally, but that's really about them personally when someone's doing that. But this one right here is different. When whatever you represent or whatever you're doing is being attacked. As the saying goes, as I already talked about in the first point, nobody criticizes a nobody. No one, let's say, criticizes a nobody. When the Golden State Warriors basketball team first had their first come up in basketball around 2014, 2015, they were starting to win some games, win a couple playoff series. They didn't win their first NBA championship until 2015. A lot of basketball purists, or people who like to call themselves purists, were criticizing the Warriors team. They were criticizing them because these guys were shooting more 3-point shots than any team in the history of basketball. They were shooting these threes at a rate that no one had ever seen before. They were making a good amount of them, but a lot of these purists just didn't like it because this is not the way they had been raised on basketball. It's not the way they had played. If we're talking about a former player, it's not the way that they thought basketball could be, not the way they thought a team could be successful in basketball. Because the thing is, in basketball, for those of you who don't know, who don't follow the NBA, they always had this saying that in the playoffs, the game slows down. That was the saying that people always said. The game slows down in the playoffs. So if you play this fast-paced game, when you get to the playoffs, you can't play like that. And if you can't play a different style, you'll lose. Or in the playoffs, you got to be able to get to the basket and get the ball inside to the bigger guys. If all you do is shoot threes, the saying was, live by the 3, die by the 3. So even though the Warriors were living well enough by the 3-pointer, a lot of basketball purists were saying, well, when times get tough and it gets into the playoffs and the game slows down and every team can game plan for you the way they can't in the regular season, the Warriors are going to lose because all they do is shoot threes. One day they're going to go cold and they're going to miss a bunch of threes and then they're going to lose. That's what everybody was saying. They were being attacked, even though they were good. They were a good team. They were winning. Stephen Curry, you could tell he was about to break the 3-point record. His teammate Klay Thompson would have broke it if it wasn't for his teammate Steph Curry. They were making these 3-pointers, but everyone had a criticism for them because they were doing something that hadn't been done before. What they were representing hadn't been seen before. But as the saying goes, no one criticizes a nobody. The only reason people were criticizing Golden State is they were actually succeeding with this thing that people hadn't seen. When people criticize you, ladies and gentlemen, as I touched on in point number 1, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes is because what you're doing is threatening them in some way. You're threatening their position. You're threatening their beliefs. You're threatening their opinions. You're threatening maybe the legacy or the idea of what they represented. This happens sometimes with a younger generation. All of us at one point in our lives have or has been or is the, quote, younger generation, close quote, and the older generation, whatever generation was above us, let's say about 20 years older, our parents' generation, they look at some of the things that we do or that we did and they criticize it. Not because is anything necessarily wrong with it, but just because what you're doing is different from what they did. And they never did it that way. They never saw it that way. They never thought that it could work that way. They weren't taught that that was the way that it was done. So when they see you doing it, they criticize it because they don't know any better. Now, disclaimer, sometimes they might be right. All right, so those of you who are maybe still under the influence of your parents, just because they're criticizing something you're doing does not necessarily mean that they're wrong. Okay, athletes, just because your coach is criticizing your game doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. Doesn't mean they're doing it just, the only reason that they criticize you is not, let me back up. They're criticizing you not just because they're old and you're young or they're hating or they just had to say something. They might actually be right. All right, so this is where your wisdom has to kick in. When you're being criticized, it could be one thing, it could be another thing. It could be that what you represent is threatening how they think. It is threatening their position. It is threatening what they believe in. It is threatening their opinion. It could be that, but also could be that you actually need to listen and you need to work on your game and get better. So you got to be wise enough to discern, when should I listen and when should I ignore? And that is literally on a case-to-case basis. There are some people out there, for example, whose very job it is to just criticize people. That's what they do. There's a whole industry on television nowadays of people who every single day, they come on TV, usually have a co-host, maybe two co-hosts, and they bring guests on. And what do? All day, for 3 hours a day, they talk about whatever's going on, and someone criticizes it, someone supports it, then they argue about it, then they go back and forth, then they flip it around and they do it again. And they do that for 3 hours every single day, and millions of people watch, and they get paid millions of dollars. There's a whole industry on that. So if you happen to be the subject of one of those people, don't take it personal. All right. They may really feel what they're saying, but they may not. All right. You got to understand that TV shows are TV shows for a reason. All right. TV is entertainment. And sometimes sometimes what people really think is entertaining, and sometimes people are just saying what they know will entertain an audience. And entertaining doesn't necessarily have to mean funny. If you get people engaged, meaning they want to respond, they want to react, they want to argue about it, they want to talk about it, they want to criticize it, all of those things are engagement. As long as you are generating engagement, your TV show will keep going because you'll have ratings, and that's the business that they're in. Listen to episode, I believe it's 1273. What business are you in? When you know what business another person is in, then you'll understand the motives behind their actions. So sometimes people are criticizing you because that's just the job. It's just their job to criticize you, not because they really believe what they're saying, just because they got to put something out there, and if they didn't, then they wouldn't have a business. So you got to, again, we always bring it back to ourselves. You got to be discerning enough to understand when somebody is really hating on you and when somebody's just doing whatever their job, whatever they get paid to do. There are some people whose very job it is, and you happen to be today's news, but others do it because what you're representing is touching a nerve in them. You're doing something that they never did, maybe something they never could do. Maybe if you succeed at what you're doing, it would make them less relevant. Therefore, they don't want you to succeed so that they can stay where they are. They can keep their position. They can keep their mental state of mind. You succeeding would knock them down a peg internally. So they don't want that to happen. So they start voicing their displeasure with what you're doing, hoping that you don't succeed. Point number 3. Today's topic is how to know that you are, quote, doing something, close quote, in life. You know you're doing something when it's uncomfortable, with an asterisk here. As I'm going to give you another disclaimer here today. I got to give you disclaimers on all of these things because a lot of these are actually all of these in situations, let's say, that you can be in life. They got to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I can't stand here and just give you a blanket prescription that would apply to all thousands of people who are listening to the show and say, all right, if this is happening and this is happening and this is happening, it means this. Life doesn't work that way. If it was that black and white, we would all be robots and there'd be no need for humans, for us to be unique. This is not always being uncomfortable with what you're doing. And when I say uncomfortable, I mean you being uncomfortable in doing what you're doing. That does not always mean that what you're doing is worthwhile. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean you should keep doing it. Just because it's uncomfortable is not the only reason that's not a good enough reason to say, all right, it's significant just because it's uncomfortable, okay? Sometimes things are uncomfortable because you are in the wrong place and doing the wrong thing. Sometimes things are uncomfortable because what you're doing does not matter and you probably shouldn't be doing it. Sometimes things are uncomfortable because you are going about it the wrong way. You might have the right idea, but you're going about it the wrong way. So sometimes it's uncomfortable for a reason and you need to make a change. But other times it's uncomfortable simply because it'd be hard for a whole lot of people to do it. There's not a lot of people who are willing, who have the heart or the balls to go after what you're going after. That's the good kind of discomfort. All right, that's the eustress. All right, we talked about distress versus eustress. Distress is the stress that breaks you down. That's the stress that most people know about. The stress that causes you to sleep hard and have headaches and have no energy. That's distress. Eustress is the kind of stress that gives you energy. It actually perks you up. It challenges you, but it's a good kind of challenge. So sometimes your discomfort is distress and sometimes your discomfort is eustress. Again, your wisdom must kick in. I did an episode on knowledge versus wisdom. Understanding that wisdom is It's knowledge at a higher level. It's having knowledge and understanding when to use which knowledge. All right, because there's a lot of knowledge that you could acquire that will contradict other knowledge. So how do you know which one is quote unquote correct? They're both correct. Your wisdom is what decides which one to use in which situation based on who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. The more uncomfortable something is, in general, generally speaking, the less competition there will be to do that thing. That's just the way that it works. But there's a delicate balance here. Sometimes when there are only a few people trying to do something, it could be because it's so tough, because it's so hard, because the reward is so big that only the few who are willing to go after it are going to be worthy of getting that reward. Sometimes that's the reason why there's so little competition for doing a certain thing. But other times there's so little competition for something because it's not actually worth achieving. So this is you got to be discerning enough to figure out, all right, which one is it? And then you got to make a decision. And listen, many times in life, you got to gamble. Hopefully it's a smart gamble, or you hedged your bet a little bit, so it's more than a 50-50. Yeah, a little bit more than a 50-50 chance, hopefully. But sometimes in life, let me not say sometimes, most times in life, you're going to have to put something in with no guarantee that you're going to get something back. Most times in life, if you're going to go after something that matters, if you're going to do something like we're talking about here today, you're going to have to go after something where the competition may not be that stiff. There may not be that many people doing it. There may not be too many examples of success in the thing that you're going after, but you're going to have to put a whole lot of your own investment into that thing up front before you find out whether it was worth it or not. This is life, people. And it can be damn hard to do that thing. So what you can do to hedge your bet is, first of all, get yourself educated on whatever it is you're going after. Get educated. Go read the books. Go listen to the podcast. Go watch the videos. Go take the courses. Whatever you got to do to get the information. Educate yourself and know what's going on. Know what business you're in. Knowing what business you're in does not just mean you being able to say, oh, I'm in sales or I'm in basketball. It's also knowing what the hell goes on in sales and what goes on in basketball. What's the process? Who come before you? What's going on right now? What's about to happen in the future? You need to know these things. This is part of your education. Education does not end when you graduate from school. It begins when you graduate. Get yourself a fresh set of eyes is another thing you can do. The value of people who will keep it real with you and tell you what you need to hear and not just what you want to hear. How many of those do you have in your life? Get a fresh set of eyes on your work if you need help with that. And everybody needs help with that at some points. Get those people around you so they can tell you what's going on, things that you can't see. It's hard for us to see ourselves in the mirror, somebody once said to me. We can't see everything in ourselves, but other people can see it very easily. The same way you can notice things in people that they seem to be blind to, same thing happens with you. But you need someone around you who can actually point the things out, not just see them and not say nothing, which is what most people do. But people who will see them and actually tell you to your face. And then you got to be mature enough, first of all, to listen and disciplined enough to do something with it. Let's recap today's topic, which is how to know when you're, quote, doing something, close quote, in life. If you ever felt like you've been working, but not sure what you're doing actually matters, use this episode as a litmus test. Number one, when people's only possible criticism of you is how someone else is better than you, what that means is they're envious of you. They are telling you the same thing they told themselves. So they're hoping you don't succeed, because if you do, then they'll look like an asshole when they look in the mirror and realize that they didn't go after the same thing you had the heart to go after and you made it. Point number two, when your position or product or service is being attacked, sometimes when people are criticizing you, it's because what you're going after is threatening to them. You're threatening their position, their beliefs, their opinions, their reputation. There are some people whose job it is to criticize, though, and you just happen to be today's news. So you got to discern between the two. Number three, when it's uncomfortable. This is not always indicative. Sometimes things are uncomfortable because you don't belong doing that thing. But sometimes things are uncomfortable because it's just not easy, which is why so many people don't do it. That's where you have an opportunity. The more uncomfortable something is, the less competition there will be to do it. But there's a balance. Sometimes nobody's going after something because it's worthless. And sometimes nobody's going after it because it's hard. So you got to get a fresh set of eyes around you, some people who can keep it real with you, so you can discern when you're looking at one and when you're looking at the other, and when to place that bet, when to make that gamble, and when to go for it. And remember, you're on the clock. Work on your game. Dre all day.